Let me move on to Ukraine, launching its biggest drone attack on Russia yet, targeting Moscow using over 300 drones. It happened before Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz met with Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia this morning, though President Zelensky was not present. President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, reportedly set to meet with Putin in Moscow this week. Senator, do you know if President Trump is happy with these meetings so far?
Well, I think what the president sees in Ukraine is that this war is very unlikely to end on the battlefield. Wars can really only end in one of two ways, either on the battlefield or through negotiations. And because Joe Biden pussyfooted around for so many years, I think you've reached the point where this war is not going to be won on the battlefield. That means it's going to have to be won or settled through negotiations. One kind of incremental step that could be taken by both sides is to stop the long-range strikes into both countries. What Ukraine did last night pales in comparison to what Russia does almost every single night, targeting civilian residential neighborhoods or critical infrastructure like the energy grid in Ukraine. Another incremental step could be a pause on strikes in the Black Sea as well. These are things that would test Vladimir Putin's willingness to move towards a ceasefire. I know that's what President Trump wants to do. I think that's what the negotiating team in Saudi Arabia is testing today. And we know that President Zelensky wants to move in that direction as well. He simply wants to ensure, as does President Trump, as President Trump has said, that Ukraine retains its sovereign independence whenever there is a ceasefire. And maybe most importantly, that we have a structure in place that prevents a third future invasion of Ukraine by Russia.
Yeah, I mean, Senator, the world was just, in shock after seeing the argument, the fight in the Oval Office between President Trump and Zelensky. And I know that in addition to pausing military aid to Ukraine, the United States also paused intelligence sharing. And, this was really, I thought this was really important, given the fact that we were sharing intelligence with Zelensky and the Ukrainian officials, and it gave them an opportunity to understand and know where the Russian operational movement was. Have we resumed sharing that intelligence with Ukraine, do you know?
No, Maria, I think President Trump said a couple days ago that he expects it to resume very soon, maybe as soon as today after the meetings in Saudi Arabia. You're right that our military support has been important to Ukraine. Ukraine has a lot of weapons right now. They have enough weapons to fight for some time, but they do need that intelligence support to target Russian forces, especially Russian forces that are launching those long-range strikes against civilian targets inside Ukraine, as well as to identify those incoming rockets, missiles, and drones to try to protect Ukrainian civilians. So I think President Trump said, again, a couple days ago, he expects to resume that support soon. It may happen as soon as today, depending on how these talks go in Saudi Arabia.
And I asked President Trump about his support for Ukraine versus Russia over the years and compared the two wars with him, the war on Israel and the war on Ukraine. Listen to this. Here's President Trump with me on Sunday. Have you been as tough on Russia as you've been on Hamas? I mean, what do you want to say to critics?
Well, I've been much tougher because I haven't done to Hamas. That's been Israel that has to do to Hamas. But Israel does tell me what's going on. I think I've been very tough to Russia, tougher than anybody's ever been to Russia, if you think about it. Remember this, I'm the one that stopped the Russian pipeline, Nord Stream 2. I stopped it. Biden came in and he approved it. I'm the one that put sanctions on Russia. I'm the one that gave the javelins against Russia. No, I've been very tough, but I got along well with Putin. And because I got along well, they say, he's so... Nobody's ever been... Putin would be the first to say it. Nobody's been tougher than Trump. And Biden hasn't been tough.
Senator, it seems to me that in President Trump's second term, there's a much more intertwined group of hostile actors. In other words, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China are much more aligned than in the first administration of President Trump. Do you want to see any different tact with regard to dealing with those hostile nations?
Well, Maria, first off, President Trump is right. To any objective observer, he was much tougher on Russia in his first term than Joe Biden was. He mentioned the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which he tried to shut down. Joe Biden allowed to proceed. It was President Trump who provided the anti-tank missiles, the javelins, that allowed Ukraine to win the Battle of Kyiv, something that Barack Obama and Joe Biden hadn't done. So there's no question that President Trump, to any objective observer not suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, has been tougher on Russia than Barack Obama or Joe Biden were. It's also the case that because of Joe Biden's weakness for 4 years, as you say, our adversaries are now collaborating in a way they weren't beforehand. China is buying cut-rate Iranian oil. At least they were under Joe Biden. They're not anymore. China has provided dual-use equipment for Russia's war machine in Ukraine. North Korea has provided troops to Russia to fight in Ukraine. So I think we have to be clear-eyed that although these countries are from different parts of the world, they're all working together to undermine the United States, our friends, and our interests around the world. Yes,
very, very important point. And I think President Trump is clear-eyed about that. Let me get your take on the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, revoking dozens of security clearances for former Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, New York Attorney General Letitia James, New York City DA Alvin Bragg, and, of course, the 51 intelligence officials who signed the Hunter Biden disinformation letter. Gabbard also blocked them from accessing classified information, while Joe Biden will no longer receive daily intelligence briefings. Senator, how do you view this as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee?
Well, first, no one has a right to a security clearance, especially a former government official. Second, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Joe Biden cut off Donald Trump's security clearance and intelligence briefings shortly after Joe Biden took office. Third, as you say, a lot of this is related to the Hunter Biden laptop hoax. Those officials abused their positions as former intelligence officials, putting their credentials and credibility behind what we now know is an outright lie that was engineered by Tony Blinken at the end of a campaign in 2020. So I think this is the right decision by Tulsi Gabbard.
Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Is there anything you want to say about the 7 things you're not allowed to say about China?
I hope everyone goes out and gets a copy of it so they can understand just what a threat China poses to you and your family and your way of life.
And you've been so wonderful on this issue. Thank you for your leadership there, Senator. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Senator Tom Cotton. We'll be right back.